In the battlefield of life, allies are often illusions, and trust is currency easily spent. What happens when you stand utterly alone, with no backup, no reinforcements, and no one to rely on? Today, we reveal the ruthless psychology that transforms isolation into dominance. Power is not given, it is seized, and often, it is seized in solitude. In the quiet shadows of abandonment, the mind of a sovereign awakens. Here, where weakness whispers and fear prowls, the one who masters himself and understands the dark currents of human nature can rise unchallenged. This is not about camaraderie or shared victories. This is about singular supremacy, the cold art of one-man dominance. Prepare to step into the mind that thrives when all others falter. Do you feel secure when others surround you, offering promises of loyalty, support, and counsel? Ask yourself, how often have these promises been broken? History is littered with men who perished not for lack of skill, but for misplaced trust. Julius Caesar fell not because he was weak, but because Brutus and the senators he called allies chose ambition over allegiance. Dependence, my friend, is a trap disguised as comfort. You must see it clearly. Every hand extended toward you carries the potential to strike. Every companion is a shadow, and shadows vanish when the sun of adversity strikes. Think of the Italian city-states, Florence, Milan, Venice. Princes rose on the backs of allies, only to be toppled by the very networks they cultivated. Their downfall was never sudden. It was calculated, slow, and often invisible to the unsuspecting eye. You cannot fight fate, but you can prepare for betrayal before it arrives. Consider this. When you rely upon others, you relinquish power. Even subtly, almost imperceptibly, you trade autonomy for convenience. Do you remember the tale of Machiavelli's Florence? The Medici's enemies appeared loyal until the moment they were not. Loyalty is a currency rarely spent for free. It is earned through fear, admiration, or necessity, not generosity. And when the tides turn, those who depended on human hands alone found themselves cast into the storm, unarmed and unprepared. Ask yourself, what is dependence, if not surrendering your will to forces outside your control? The mind that relies on others loses its edge. It softens, distracted by the needs, whims, and failures of those around it. True power is honed in solitude, in the silence where no voice but your own can sway your decisions. Alexander the Great marched across continents, yet he trusted few. Even in his inner circle, suspicion sharpened his judgment. He understood that the world rewards the solitary, not the comfortably accompanied. But do not mistake isolation for loneliness. There is a subtle difference. Loneliness breeds fear and hesitation. Isolation, when wielded deliberately, cultivates clarity and strategic vision. When you stand alone, your decisions are unpolluted by the biases, weaknesses, and treacheries of others. You see the battlefield, political or personal, in high definition. You anticipate moves that would be invisible if clouded by the counsel of unreliable allies. Observe the merchants of Venice, masters of trade and deception alike. They built empires on careful calculations, rarely sharing critical knowledge even with partners. Why? Because they understood the cost of reliance. One careless confidant could collapse fortunes overnight. In your own life, consider how many failures trace back to misplaced trust. How many victories could have been secured if you had depended solely on your own cunning, skill, and willpower? Dependence seduces you with a promise of strength, but delivers vulnerability. The weak see unity as a shield. The shrewd see it as a mirror, reflecting their own potential weaknesses. If you allow others to dictate your course, you are no longer the master of your fate, you are a passenger, drifting at the mercy of forces you cannot fully perceive. And when those forces shift, when ambition or fear corrupts your allies, what remains but ruin? Look closer at your environment. Who truly adds value to your endeavor, and who merely dilutes it? Are their intentions aligned with your goals, or are they masks worn for convenience, charm, or advantage? Every handshake carries a question. Will this hand protect me or betray me? The strongest men in history asked these questions constantly, never once assuming loyalty as a given. And neither should you. The first step to power, then, is understanding that dependence is an illusion. Your strength must arise from within, from self-reliance that no betrayal can erode. Build your mind as a fortress. Fortify your skills, your strategies, your patience. When the storm comes, and it always does, you must stand unshaken, unaccompanied, unbound by fragile alliances. So I ask you, are you prepared to see the truth of your solitude? Or will you cling to the comfort of others and risk everything when they turn against you? The path to dominance begins where dependence ends. And in the next segment, we will uncover how to wield the ultimate weapon of the solitary mind, emotional mastery over all who would seek to sway you. Have you ever noticed how men crumble at the slightest provocation? One harsh word, a fleeting insult, a sudden betrayal, and the mind, once sharp, descends into chaos. Emotions are weapons, but not all wield them with skill. Most allow themselves to be wielded by them. Anger, fear, desire, these are chains disguised as instinct. And yet, the man who masters them can move through the world like a shadow, untouchable, untethered, unstoppable. Consider Caesar on the Ides of March. His guards and advisors whispered of plots and dangers, yet he remained outwardly calm, composed, even indulgent in public. His enemies, sensing his humanity, saw only the man, not the strategist within. And yet, within that calm, he exercised control over perception, over the moment, over his very fate. Emotional mastery is not about absence of feeling. It is about dominance over reaction. It is about the power to appear serene while chaos swirls beneath your feet. Ask yourself, when provoked, do you react or do you calculate? When insulted, do you lash or do you wait? Every impulse, surrendered to the raw force of emotion, is a gift to those who would exploit you. Think of Napoleon, whose brilliance was matched only by his ability to conceal frustration. He understood the currency of composure. A commander who reveals panic is already half defeated. The soldier who yields to fear invites defeat. So, too, in life, mastery over your inner tempest dictates mastery over the world outside. Emotions are mirrors of vulnerability. They reflect your desires, your weaknesses, your hidden anxieties. Do you show rage? You reveal what you cannot tolerate. Do you show fear? You reveal what you cannot face. Do you show love or longing too openly? You reveal what can be used against you. Every subtle twitch, every hesitation, every glance betrays information that others will seize without mercy. This is the truth few dare to admit. Your feelings are a battlefield, and your opponent is always watching. Yet mastery is not suppression. Suppression is fragile. It fractures under pressure. True mastery is transmutation. Turn anger into strategy, fear into calculation, desire into leverage. Cleopatra knew this well, employing charm, intellect, and emotional projection to control kings, generals, and empires alike. She did not deny her emotions, she weaponized them. Her enemies were entangled in her perception of herself, never realizing the hand that moved them. You, too, must learn to channel, not choke, the forces within. Let us examine a modern example, unseen by history books, but no less potent. The corporate battlefield. Executives who shout at subordinates, who allow anxiety to leak into decisions, collapse under the weight of their own affect. Those who mask insecurity with calm, who smile while calculating ruin, dominate not because of intellect alone, but because they control the perception of power. They are sovereigns of both mind and moment. Emotional mastery allows them to manipulate reality itself, bending the behavior of others without striking a blow. Ask yourself, how often have your emotions betrayed you? How often has fear frozen your hand, desire blinded your judgment, or anger shattered alliances? You are not alone. The masses are enslaved by their feelings, and the wise man moves among them like a phantom, striking where hesitation lingers, seizing what weakness leaves unguarded. This is the first rule of true solitude. Control yourself or be controlled. And remember this: the mind that cannot govern its own heart cannot govern a kingdom, a business, or even a single encounter. Composure is not mere virtue. It is a weapon, sharper than the sword, more effective than armies, and far more enduring. By mastering yourself, you gain leverage over all who would oppose you, all who would seek to exploit your impulses, all who would read your intentions like an open manuscript. So I ask you, are you content to be manipulated by your own instincts, a puppet of invisible strings? Or will you seize dominion over your own inner empire? The path forward demands that you strip emotion of its tyranny, bending it to your will. Only then will you walk through conflict unshaken, through betrayal unscarred, through power unchallenged. And yet, even mastery of emotion is but a single weapon in the arsenal of the solitary strategist. In the next segment, we will uncover how anticipating betrayal and deception transforms a lone man into a sovereign force, one whose enemies never see the blow coming until it is too late. Do you understand the subtle power of absence? How simply by stepping back, by removing yourself from the immediate fray, you can command attention, influence behavior, and bend perception to your will. Most men believe that power requires constant visibility, that presence equals control. But the truly cunning know the opposite. Absence creates desire, detachment creates authority, and the unseen hand guides events far more effectively than the overt gesture. Consider the tactics of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen of England. She rarely appeared in public without careful calculation, and when she did, every word, every glance, every pause was deliberate. She understood that perception is malleable and that distance magnifies influence. Courtiers and foreign ambassadors alike speculated endlessly about her thoughts, her intentions, her moods. That uncertainty crafted, controlled, and deliberate was her weapon. Do you see it? By appearing unpredictable, she compelled obedience without force, manipulation without confrontation, and loyalty without promise. Ask yourself, how often do you reveal your hand too soon? How often do you give others the illusion that they understand you, when in truth, comprehension is your greatest advantage? Manipulating perception is not lying. It is framing reality so that others act in accordance with your design, without realizing they are doing so. It is the art of shaping thought at a distance, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. And the strings are more effective when your audience is unaware they exist. Look at the strategy of Cardinal Richelieu, architect of French influence in the 17th century. He rarely acted directly, but his manipulations reshaped Europe. He fostered conflicts among rival powers, guided alliances, and directed the ambitions of kings, all while appearing to serve their interests. To the world, he was but a counselor. Behind the curtain, he was the master. He understood that perception is the currency of power, and by controlling it, he commanded outcomes without ever raising a sword. Psychologically, this works because men are drawn to certainty and repelled by ambiguity. Yet, the clever manipulator understands that uncertainty can be weaponized. When your actions are measured, your presence limited, and your intentions obscured, you provoke speculation, admiration, and even fear. People begin to fill in the blanks themselves, projecting onto you the authority and capability that you want them to see. And once that projection takes hold, you have influenced without confrontation, controlled without coercion, and moved events as if by intuition alone. Even Sun Tzu recognized this principle: to appear weak when you are strong, to appear absent when you are present, to mislead without falsehood. There is strategy in detachment, cunning in perception. The world reacts to what it believes, not what is true. If you can shape belief, you can shape action. If you can shape action, you can shape destiny. Do you see how critical this is? The unseen manipulator wields influence that the bold cannot touch, because the bold are visible, predictable, and therefore vulnerable. But manipulating perception is not idle trickery. It requires discipline, calculation, and patience. You must study the minds of others, their desires, their fears, their assumptions. You must anticipate how they interpret absence, how they fill silence, how they read pauses and glances. Every misstep is an opportunity lost. Every miscalculated reveal is a power surrendered. Solitude trains the mind to recognize these subtleties. Reflection tempers action into precision. And when applied, even the smallest gestures can sway the largest councils, redirect the ambitions of nations, and bend rivals to your will without a single open confrontation. Ask yourself, could you wield influence in this manner? Could you act indirectly yet decisively, steering events while remaining untouchable? The power lies not in presence, but in perception. Not in movement, but in the deliberate withholding of movement. Not in words, but in the silence that makes words echo. History is filled with those who underestimated the unseen, who mistook absence for weakness and were swiftly undone. Those who mastered the art of distant control ruled without opposition, shaped without struggle, and triumphed without bloodshed. And now, consider the final question. Once perception is mastered, once influence is established from afar, what is the next step? How do you transform silent manipulation into decisive, unavoidable action? That, my friend, is where the cold calculus of control meets the crucible of execution. And in the next keynote, you will learn how to take the threads of perception you have woven and turn them into absolute dominion, where your strategy becomes reality and your unseen hand becomes irresistible. Have you ever considered that reliance is the silent enemy of power? Every favor you accept, every trust you place in another, is a thread that can strangle ambition. The world is filled with opportunists, sycophants, and betrayers who wait not to serve you, but to exploit your dependence. To survive, to dominate, you must cultivate self-sufficiency. A state where your strength is internal, your resources controlled, and your will independent of the whims of others. Look to the life of Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher. Despite the power at his command, he cultivated a mind and discipline that could not be shaken by the shifting tides of the Senate, the ambitions of generals, or the flattery of courtiers. In his solitude, he mastered himself first, and from that mastery, he commanded the empire. Self-sufficiency is not merely material, it is emotional, psychological, and strategic. It is armor against manipulation, a shield that no army can provide. Ask yourself, how often are your decisions influenced by the comfort of support, the fear of isolation, or the hope for approval? The dependent mind is weak. It hesitates. It compromises. And in hesitation, power is lost. In compromise, control slips through your fingers. The disciplined individual, however, recognizes that the world offers nothing but opportunity for the clever and exploitation for the naive. Self-sufficiency is the recognition that no one owes you loyalty, and that true power comes from mastering your own resources, your intellect, your patience, and your resolve. Consider Frederick the Great of Prussia. He relied on no single advisor to determine his path. He studied, reflected, and decided with his own mind. Yet he observed others carefully, understanding their motivations, their desires, and their weaknesses. By being self-sufficient in judgment, he avoided deception and manipulated outcomes to his advantage. Those around him were tools, yes, but his control was never dependent upon their obedience. It was rooted in his own unshakable discipline. Could you cultivate such autonomy in your own life? Psychologically, self-sufficiency cultivates fearlessness. The mind that trusts only itself is immune to the manipulation of flattery, the terror of threats, the seduction of false promises. Emotional dependence is a leash, often invisible, that others use to control you. By mastering your own reactions, by training your desires and tempering your ambitions with discipline, you create a space where others' influence diminishes. You become untouchable, not because you wield overwhelming force, but because no one can exploit weakness you do not possess. Even in commerce and politics, this principle holds. Those who rely on favors, alliances, or the goodwill of others are often swept aside when tides change. The independent actor economically, emotionally, strategically moves freely, strikes decisively, and acts without apology. Your power is not measured by your network, but by the degree to which you can act unimpeded. The fewer you depend on, the fewer can betray you. And in the realm of power, betrayal is inevitable unless your autonomy is complete. Ask yourself, are you cultivating this discipline, or do you wander at the mercy of circumstance, buffeted by opinion and influence? Self-sufficiency is not isolation. It is preparation. It is mastery over desire, mastery over expectation, mastery over circumstance. It is the deliberate choice to be able to act when others cannot, to endure when others falter, and to command when others rely upon you. Every step toward independence strengthens your position, fortifies your mind, and magnifies your influence. Yet, self-sufficiency is a harsh teacher. It demands sacrifice. It demands endurance. It demands confronting your own limitations and confronting the truth that men and women are rarely loyal beyond convenience, but the rewards are profound. The self-sufficient individual navigates life with clarity, manipulates without compromise, and survives the schemes that destroy the dependent. You learn to be your own ally, your own strategist, your own fortress. And in this discipline, you discover the ultimate freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom from weakness, freedom to act decisively in the theater of power. So now consider, once you have mastered yourself, once your dependence is stripped away, once your mind and will are your only allies, what is the next step? How do you leverage this independence not just to survive, but to dominate? That question, my friend, is the threshold of the next keynote. There, the unseen weapon of your mind and the fortress of your self-sufficiency will converge, revealing how to transform quiet strength into influence that is unstoppable, irresistible, and utterly final. Do you know why men fear solitude? They mistake it for weakness, for exile, for irrelevance. Yet the wise understand that isolation is not absence, it is leverage. In the silence, in the withdrawal, you gain what crowds can never give: control, clarity, and the power to shape perception. The world is always moving, always reacting, but the man who has learned to act from a position outside the fray commands the currents instead of being swept away. Consider the strategy of Genghis Khan. He often separated himself from his generals and his courts, walking alone in the steppe, reflecting, observing, planning. From this distance, he could perceive weaknesses in his own forces and in his enemies. He could orchestrate entire campaigns while others were busy squabbling over immediate gains. Isolation was his crucible. It forged foresight, patience, and the capacity to manipulate entire nations without ever showing vulnerability. Could you learn to wield solitude in the same way, to transform absence into authority? Ask yourself, what is influence, truly? Is it simply the ability to command, to shout orders, to be seen? Or is it the subtle power to guide, to bend others to your will without their knowledge, to have the world move according to your design while appearing natural? Influence is rarely loud. It is most effective when it is unseen, and isolation, carefully maintained, magnifies this effect. In withdrawing from the noise, you force others to notice your absence, to speculate on your thoughts, and to seek your approval, consciously or not. Even in diplomacy, this principle has been used to devastating effect. Cardinal Richelieu, architect of French power, understood that the most potent control is exercised not through presence, but through strategic distance. He withdrew from direct confrontation, allowing rivals to act, making their choices predictable, and then intervening at the precise moment to bend outcomes to his will. In isolation, you cultivate patience. You calculate without interference. You observe without being observed. And in that space, influence becomes inevitable. Psychologically, isolation sharpens the mind because it forces reflection, self-mastery, and clarity of intent. When removed from constant input, the mind is free to analyze patterns, detect hidden motivations, and anticipate outcomes. Your observations are no longer clouded by the expectations, fears, or manipulations of others. You become the unseen strategist, the silent hand, the invisible force shaping events while the world mistakes them for chance. Power, then, is not measured by your presence, but by the movement you cause in absence. Look at Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. He often retreated into contemplation, walking alone, thinking, reading, writing. In solitude, he analyzed battles, motivations, and the shifting tides of public opinion. He consulted, yes, but his final decisions were rooted in his own reflection. Isolation gave him perspective and influence, allowing him to act decisively and guide a nation through turmoil. Would you not want the same advantage, the capacity to shape events while remaining untouchable? Yet, isolation is not a passive act. It is discipline in motion. It demands that you resist the temptation to engage frivolously, to react emotionally, to feed the illusions of connection. Every action must be deliberate, every withdrawal calculated. Those who fail in this discipline mistake absence for abandonment and lose influence rather than gain it. The power of solitude lies not merely in being alone, but in understanding how absence amplifies your effect. It forces others to seek you, to project authority onto you, and to act in ways that align with your design without your direct involvement. Ask yourself, could you endure the discomfort, the uncertainty, the patience required to wield isolation as a tool? Could you turn absence into anticipation, silence into strategy, and solitude into a stage upon which others act exactly as you desire? Those who do are rare, but they command more than armies, more than gold, more than alliances. They command perception, and perception is the invisible force that shapes all outcomes. Now, the final question emerges. Once you have mastered solitude and turned it into influence, how do you extend this control outward without revealing your hand, without alerting the world to your true power? That, my friend, is the ultimate test. In the next chapter, you will learn how to translate the quiet mastery of isolation into domination over events and men, where influence becomes irresistible, subtlety becomes authority, and the world bends without resistance. Power is rarely taken by force. True dominion is quieter, darker, and invisible. It is the hand that guides without being seen, the mind that observes, calculates, and acts while others stumble in ignorance. Do you see it? Influence is not shouted. It is whispered through absence, shaped in solitude, and executed with precision. Those who depend on crowds, on approval, on allies, are vulnerable. Those who cultivate themselves, manipulate perception, and wield patience become untouchable. Every pause, every withdrawal, every subtle gesture can bend the will of others if you understand the art. Control is not in chains or threats. It is in expectation, in fear, in desire you have planted without revealing your hand. Ask yourself, are you merely reacting to the world, or are you shaping it? Comment below with the strategies you would use in silence. Subscribe now to master more Machiavellian truths. Share this knowledge, and remember, those who understand the unseen always rule.